Namaste everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Vichaar Manthan podcast. I am your host Sumit Sharma, and it gives me great honor to be hosting this podcast for you all. A Vichaar Manthan project looking to explore the modern day through a Dharmic lens, through a civilizational lens. Very excited today to introduce you to Kushal Mehra, who runs a podcast of his own. If you don't know, please do look it up in the show notes, the Cārvāka Podcast, which nearly has 100k subs, is in the top 25 of news and politics in India. Kushal is a textile entrepreneur, has studied philosophy, but is most famous for his podcasting abilities. Kushal namaste and welcome to the Vichaar Manthan podcast.
Namaste. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this chat. I've been, engaging with Vichaar Manthan digitally all this time. So it's nice to be in London, England, in person, in the bone, as they say, in the flesh and bone.
Absolutely. And so how has London been for you so far?
It's been hectic. I've been here for 3 days. It's been a lot of traveling, but I've really enjoyed this. I came to London now after a good 2 decades, because the last time almost 2 decades, I should say, I think I came here last in 2005 for a business trip at that point of time when I was a textile entrepreneur. Now I'm a former textile entrepreneur. I went cold turkey 3 years ago where I quit everything and I'm now a full-time podcaster. But yeah, in 2005, my trip was related to my textile business. Sure. And yeah, I enjoyed it then. I enjoy it now. In many ways, it's very similar to India. Everybody drives on the same side of the road because I'm just coming from America, right? So my dimensions are a bit haywire right now because everything in America is on the other side. And in England, it's like, okay, I'm back home now. This is very familiar.
Absolutely. And so if we talk about your podcast, maybe in a bit more detail. So Cārvāka Podcast, where did the idea first begin? Where did you start with that?
Well, I'm a big fan of mixed martial arts. So I used to follow mixed martial arts for a few years now, since it was available in India. And when I was, consuming content, I used to look at interviews and discussions related to the world of mixed martial arts. And one of these days, you know how the YouTube recommendation algorithm works, right? It recommended something which looked like an interview. And then I got into a sports podcast. Right. And my introduction to podcasting was through the world of sport. And when I started watching this, I was like, this is a very interesting format where nobody cuts each other off. They take forever to discuss one point of view. They even deviate. They take detours, may have nothing to do with the subject at hand per se. And it's a lot of fun. And it was something you can put on in the background while you're doing your daily chore, you're going for a walk, you're driving in traffic. And it was just ideal for me. It was just perfect. And I loved it. And then I started listening to it as a consumer. And then I got hooked onto it. And I clearly remember one day, I was like, what if somebody does this in India?
Yeah.
And I clearly remember a friend of mine. He's from Uttarakhand in India. His name is Alok Bhatt. And Alok, I remember, told me, I was like, he told me in Hindi, tujhe ye karna chahiye. Ye kar, do it yourself. And I was like, okay, I'll think about it, because my whole life was reading books, doing a bit of political activism here and there. Like I was involved with India Against Corruption in 2010 at that time. And I had a lot of things to say, but I was like, news media is very annoying. I find it very annoying. Personally, everybody's just shouting, especially in Indian news channels.
When you turn the channel on, you're like 7 different people.
So everybody's like, no, you listen to me, Mr. So-and-so. It's like, okay. But this was refreshing. Nobody was judging each other. Everybody was calm. Everybody was collected. And it just gave me hope. And I was like, I'm going to experiment with it. So I remember I bought my first microphone. It was a Blue Yeti microphone.
I have one of those.
Yeah. So I bought that microphone. And I remember my mom and dad looking at me. He was like, ye kya leke aa gaya? Kind of, the hell is this? And I just started. It used to be like once a month I would talk about something. And then slowly but surely it became twice a month. And then for the first 3 years, it was just twice a month or maybe once a month at times. And then COVID hit. And then my factory was forcefully shut down by the government. I had nothing else to do other than clean the house and do a podcast. And something happened. My podcast just took off in 2020. It was there before. I was doing it, but it was like I had to do the podcast 6 hours and then I had to work at the factory 8 hours. And it was very tiring. And then it just took off after COVID. And then in most content creators, when things got normalized, their content channels went down, but mine didn't. I just stayed there. And then one day I just told my father, I was like, Dad, I think I don't want to go back to the factory. I just don't like it. And then my parents were like, okay, fine, we'll wrap things up. And we slowly weaned off everything.
That sounds like an easy, you'd normally be like, yeah, you know.
No, it was not easy. It took time to convince them, but because it was a family business, right? And they only started it because I told them. It was not like, they literally expanded it because I wanted them to expand, and it took some time, but then they saw what was happening, right? At first my parents would not understand, but then they started to say, oh, isko to sab log jante hain, kind of a thing, jo TV pe aate hain. And then they were like, okay, apparently hamare bacche ko log jante hain. It was very funny. So and then they got convinced, and then they were like, "Take it, you do what you want to do." And today it's so weird. Like, I don't even think I'm an Indian podcaster anymore. I think of myself as a global podcaster. I go around the world. I mean, my last few podcasts are with like native Canadians, like people who are born and raised in Canada. My literal podcast that is going to be up on Friday is going to be with a Canadian stand-up comic.
Right.
And I'm talking to Canadians now.
And how do you, so you talk about all like sports, politics, philosophy, everything. How do you pick a topic, or is it down to sort of the
it all boils down to what interests me. If I find something to be interesting, I'll talk about it. And this is, a lot of times content creators ask me this question, that how do you decide? Look, everybody and their chacha mama knows what you're supposed to do on YouTube. Look at what's trending and just talk about it if you want clicks. Now, in my case, I'm not saying this in a braggadocious way. I'm just saying in an as it is way. In my case, I did not jump into podcasting because, I needed money to make a career. I already had a career, and I had a very successful career. I was a well-to-do guy already before this. So when I decided to start podcasting, it was literally a passion project. And even today, even when I'm monetizing it and I'm living off it, it still remains to be a passion project. I still don't compromise on my principles. I don't do ad reads. Offered. Look, I have reasonable numbers for an Indian podcaster to get advertisement offers. I don't do them. I still don't do ad reads. For me, how do I pick a subject is I want to talk about it. I've covered, I think, more than 100 books on the podcast now.
Amazing,
and I have made sure that I read every single one of them. And it's just it's as random as, I read this book, I find it interesting, I'll shoot an email to the author. And the author will, if the author says yes, they say. Initially, a lot of them would say no, because who the hell is this guy? Now they look at the numbers, they're like, okay, this guy has decent numbers, they'll just talk.
Good coverage for
them. And now
well.
I don't even have to do that, because almost every single publisher just contacts me from,
Does that come with responsibility then? So you're talking about a particular subject, it's your opinion, whatever you want to talk about, whatever research you've done. Do you need to make sure you've got the stats and facts?
Absolutely.
And does responsibility come into that?
Absolutely. I think it is part of the job. I think you have to be a responsible content creator. My biggest grouse with most people that I see these days in the form of content creation is, and this is not a jibe at anyone in particular, I think I'm guilty of it at times too, is that we're not responsible enough. Because at the end of the day, what is our contribution to the human race should be a question that we should ask ourselves on a daily basis. What is our dharma, right? What is our dharma? And that is something I'm very conscious of, which is why, I get a lot of brickbats from my own listeners, because for example, I've never hidden, I am very pro-Israel. For example, I'm just giving you a hypothetical example, but I will do a podcast for the case for Palestine too.
Okay.
And I made sure I did it because I felt that it's morally irresponsible not to do it.
Okay.
To me, these things matter. I'm not saying that content creators who don't do it are wrong or bad human beings or anything. They choose their own path. I have chosen my own path, and I am very proud of what I have created. Literally I am a Cārvāka. I am literally heterodox by nature. My nature is heterodox. I don't like authoritarianism. The moment somebody tells me I can't do this,
you want to do it.
I will make sure to find out at least why they're saying.
Sure.
I'll not jump into it, but I'll find out, why is this person saying no to me? I want to know why. And the moment I find out, if it doesn't make sense, I'll be like, okay, that person made sense. But if it makes sense to me, I will do it no matter what people say.
So there's a positive intent towards the inquiry of the conversation. And I think we're trying to do something similar here on the Vichaar Manthan podcast. Let's take modern day issues, modern day, the way we live and learn and understand that through a Dharmic lens. Now, you picked on the word dharma. So I asked you, could you help us define that? What does that mean to the listener who doesn't know what dharma means?
Well, the literal meaning of the word, if you go from the root word, is that which upholds, right? But it has multiple meanings in multiple contexts, right? You have your dharma as a child. What is your dharma as a child? Your dharma as a child could be taking care of your parents, taking care of your surrounding. Your dharma as a podcaster. What is your dharma as a podcaster? Your dharma as a podcaster is when you present a subject, you should give the maximum possible information to your consumer. That's your dharma as a podcaster. So dharma could be in the form of kartavya or duty. Dharma could also be in the form of what is the ultimate reality. Now, obviously, I come from a Cārvāka perspective, so my perspective will be very different from most of your listeners, or most of Indians for that matter, because I'm a materialist in that sense. I don't agree with the Advaitin perspective about what is the nature of the Brahman. I am very skeptical to that. So to me, dharma is that swadharma. Again, in dharma, you have a subset of swadharma. And for me, it's about how you try to make a positive contribution to society. For me, that's been the focus of my dharma. How do I play a role when it comes to what society do we want to leave? Like, I don't have children myself. I personally don't have a child. But just because I don't have a child doesn't mean I become full on Cārvāka and a hedonist and I live my life to the fullest. I have to think about what do I leave for the future generations. So in terms of resource consumption, now I'm not someone who's saying be a minimalist. I'm a capitalist. But can you be a conscious capitalist? Can you enjoy the fruits of the free market but leave something for the future generations to enjoy?
So years from now, when little children will look back at your podcast, they'll have something good to acknowledge and learn and read from?
Well, or they might say, who was this jackass?
Sure. What are some of the challenges you've had then with putting a podcast together? Have you had a very difficult guest or a topic that was difficult?
Honestly, no. It depends on, for me, I never made the podcast about me. It was just, if I'm curious, the moment I am a host of a podcast, I barely speak. If somebody did an analysis of, I think I've done more than 500 episodes now, I must not speak more than 5 to 7% on my podcast. 80% plus is my guest speaking. I'm just listening and asking questions. That's all. And I leave my ego aside when I'm hosting someone. I don't care. Like, I have certain lines. I will not let them cross those lines. Like, if somebody comes to my podcast and literally says XYZ groups needs to be eliminated completely, I'll push back and I'll be like, get out of here. Now, that's something I will not tolerate. I will not tolerate literal casteism on my podcast, saying just because you're born in a particular caste, you are inferior, or just because I am born in a particular caste, I am superior. Well, that is something I will not tolerate, because I am a moral objectivist. I believe in a moral objective standards. But beyond that, I don't. I think the biggest problem is people take themselves too seriously. I don't take myself so seriously. I still, even after so many years now, I'm not saying I'm famous, but like, I do get recognized once in a while in India or outside India. I still think, content creators take themselves too seriously. I still think
autographs on the London Tube,
nothing of that sort. I find it all too funny. I still believe people should not be taking celebrities so seriously. I don't think I'm a celebrity. Like, if somebody spoke to me, I'll start talking to them just like I used to before I was a podcaster. For me, these things don't matter. In fact, one of the best things my dear friend who's a stand-up comic told me once, and he's a very famous stand-up comic, and he told me, was like, listen, the best fame to have is fame that you and I have, where at least if we get recognized, we can still walk on the path. Imagine Virat Kohli. Imagine Sachin Tendulkar.
Normal lives are very
You can't live normal lives. I was like, yeah, man, I would never wish that kind of fame on anyone, because you just stop having a normal life. And that's something I get scared of that.
I was watching the Beckham series on Netflix just come out. I don't know if you've seen it. And they're talking about how difficult it was for their child to go to school, to go here. You can't even go to a restaurant, without security around you and that kind of thing.
It's terrible.
It's a difficult life, but other fruits to be gained within that. So let's switch gears a bit. So you cover lots of topics you're passionate about, you're interested about. Obviously, coming from India, Bharat, there's a good understanding there. And you're traveled. You say yourself, you are a global podcaster. And we had Rajiv Malhotra recently actually talking about Western universalism. So I want to just go on that theme a little bit. What is it the West fails to understand about India?
I think they don't get us at a fundamental level. So I often talk about this concept. I talk about skin deep diversity versus soul deep diversity.
Okay.
So let me unpack this a little. So skin deep diversity is what you have in the West over here. So let's say we are in this room, we are recording this podcast. Let's say hypothetically there were 15 people over here discussing something. Now, the Western diversity protocol is we should have a black guy, a white guy, a brown guy, a Chinese
Equity?
guy. And they will have different people who are ethnically different, racially different, but beyond a point, they all think the same way.
Okay.
So there's no diversity of thought. It's just they homogenize the point of view. I think that's how I look at Western universalism. Again, it doesn't mean that there is no universal value that we can all attain. Before somebody says there are some universal values, but soul deep diversity, I think, is the Indian way, which is the way of Dharma, where we can literally be very different. And as long as we believe in mutual respect, reciprocity, and Krishna's ahimsa, right? Krishna's ahimsa is a kind of most of the times no first strike policy.
Okay.
But if you strike me, I have a right to defend myself. So if we have those three basic principles, I think you can have soul deep diversity where you can literally be different. Like even right now, after so many years, I lost faith in reincarnation and all those things when I was 18.
Right.
I didn't buy them. I still don't buy them. But I still call myself a Hindu. Like the thought of me not being a Hindu has not even arrived in my head.
Sure. And so what the West doesn't understand the fundamentals of that. Where has it failed to do that? Like it's not like we just popped up recently.
Well, it's in the principles of Abrahamism, I believe. I think it's the Abraham. See, people often talk about decolonizing the mind. I always say it's not decolonizing, it's de-Abrahamizing the mind.
Yes.
You don't need to decolonize your mind. Again, I'm not saying the Abrahamic vision is a vision and it has something to offer to the world. But oftentimes people confuse decolonization with de-Abrahamization. I believe I don't need to decolonize my mind because I think the colonizer has good things to offer too. I will take them.
Okay.
I need to de-Abrahamize my mind. I need to stop looking at the world from a very top-down Abrahamic vision where everything has to be centralized into a one God, one book. It's kind of a binary way whereas the way of Dharma is a very bottom up where you have your Ishta Devata, you have your Kula Devata, then you have other Devatas also. And we kind of live our life in a very, or in my case, there are no Devatas.
Okay.
Right? There are no Devatas, but I still enjoy the festivals. I literally participate in them.
Right. Just Rakshasas walking the street.
Yes, for me at least. So that's the whole idea, which is where I believe the West is struggling. And actually Rajiv Malhotra did explain it well in Being Different, where he talks about difference anxiety.
Yes.
And that difference anxiety is inbuilt in Abrahamic religion.
And the loss of power.
Yeah.
It's because if you're not the dominant narrative, then you don't get to control what's actually going on.
And which is a very problematic thing in the entire discourse today. And if somebody points that out, it is not understood. Like I'll share my journey as a disbeliever.
Sure.
So I was the typical angry atheist who was inspired by Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, the four horsemen of new atheism. And then I remember clearly, I've said the story multiple times, but I'll repeat it again. I went on online forums. The internet had just started to boom at that time. And there were these online atheistic forums like Nirmukta in India. And the biggest one was Richard Dawkins' website, where all atheists would come and talk about different things. And I remember reading the posts of all these people from Abrahamic backgrounds. And I was like, why are they so angry? Like what happened to them? And I would not relate to them. And I was like, yeah, I think Hinduism has this problem, but listen, I'm not that angry. Like that used
it was
to be
more you wanted to understand, learn, dive a bit deeper. Okay,
and believe me, I have never been thrown out of a single Astic or a believers forum online, never in my life, for questioning them. The only forums I've been thrown out of are run by atheists,
right?
Because they hate the idea of This disbeliever coming and saying, I don't hate religion. I just don't agree with many things religion says. And I think we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And you guys are too harsh.
Yeah. Is that like a very black and white approach?
Yes.
One God, one devil.
Exactly. Which is why I call it Abrahamic atheism. I literally call atheism in the West, which is in its prime avatar is new atheism, is Abrahamic atheism. It is atheism without the God. Basically, you are a mirror image of your society. Your anxieties, your troubles, your experiences are all a mirror image of your society. Think about life being born into a running train.
Right.
Some things are just set in motion for you, and you hop onto that train and you react to the surrounding around you. And most of these atheists react to Abrahamism, and all the anxieties that Abrahamism generates in society, they react to it in the same way as Abrahamism does. In my case, nobody even told me, like, I told my friends I don't believe in this. They're like, fine, shut up, kind of a thing, get on with it, kind of a thing. Nobody cares in the Hindu society. They're like, ha, Cārvāka, theek hai, baith ja, kind of a thing.
Right.
And they don't care. There is no inbuilt hostility to a blasphemer or an apostate.
Sure. But you could really feel that here.
Oh, I have felt it. And I find it so weird. Now I don't feel it as much in the Christian faith, because I think Christianity just lost in the West, if you ask me.
Right.
It just lost. I mean, we are sitting in the United Kingdom, or 50% of the United Kingdom is either atheist or no religion at all, right?
When the census came out, there's a big problem for them, actually, is now it's a minority religion.
Yeah.
So then do you need to build all these churches?
Yeah. That's the point. So I think it still doesn't change the nature of Abrahamism. And I believe, which is why a lot of what is called atheism plus or wokeism is a result of new atheism. New atheism smashed religion, completely smashed religion. And then there was a generation of these kids who were born after the 90s who grew up to be 15, 20-year-olds in early to late 2010. And they're like, hang on, life is meaningless. Where do I find meaning? They found meaning in social justice.
Sure.
And their religion is social justice, and which shows, we're just meaning-seeking species. We're literally meaning-seeking species.
So even those people that are sitting on the roads, just oil protesting, they're finding meaning in that.
Yeah, they find meaning in that.
And that gives them purpose.
Because they lost their church.
Okay.
They lost their church, and they find that's their church, the street where they stop there and they throw oil on the paintings and they do all those weird things that we are accustomed to seeing. That's their meaning, and that's how they find meaning in life.
So they shouldn't be mocked. That's their life, their vision. Or can we look at it from a sort of more social aspect? Actually, you're damaging property here. You're not actually.
I think they should be mocked. I mean, if religion was mocked, why shouldn't they be mocked? I think it's a stupid religion, if you ask me. In my point, I think atheism plus is a very stupid religion. It makes no sense to me personally. But I'm not saying ban it.
Right.
I think we should debate the principles of atheism plus. And we should not call it wokeism. It should be called atheism plus. It's atheism plus something. And this is the plus, social justice. And I don't know why people don't like to call it. Atheists get very offended when I say this. I was like, this is your religion, social justice. Yeah. They're like, no, we believe in secular humanism. Go and visit the secular humanist site. Not every atheist believes in atheism plus. I was like, not everybody in humanities believes in wokeism too.
Sure. Okay.
So what's your point?
Many challenges. So we're talking about India and sort of the thoughts coming out of there, and the West perhaps not understanding so much Hindu thought or New Age India. Is that a problem for the West? Because everything's globalized now, right? And any thought pattern you might have, any political party that says something in one part of the world, its ripples are felt throughout the world. Does the West have a problem with New Age India, not able to understand it?
I don't think so. The West has a problem with New Age India. The West has the problem with the East. The West doesn't get the East. Our External Affairs Minister, Shri Jaishankar, said it beautifully recently when he had just visited the United States of America. And I think he was at the Hudson Institute, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was at the Hudson Institute, where he said, India is not anti-Western. India is non-Western. Now, for the West, it's very hard to fathom somebody who speaks in proper English.
Very eloquently.
But still doesn't agree with them on certain fundamental issues. they sympathize with them. They come across like times, I see Indians saying something as stupid as I am secular. How can you be secular? The state has to be secular. The individual cannot be secular. Because literally then that means you're a blank slate. You're not a blank slate. you have biases.
Opinions,
So you do have opinions. So individuals can't be, you can be a secularist, but you can't be secular. And Indians say silly things like, oh, I am secular. I am very secular, sir. So I find it very stupid.
And does that come into like identity, needing to wear a badge, needing to belong to some
like I said,
thought pattern?
Meaning-seeking species, right? Because you were raised to believe, a certain section of Indians were raised to believe that your native identity was a problem. Now, I'm not saying there is nothing problematic in my native identity. You should just go and listen to my podcast where I am criticizing my society on a weekly basis. But it doesn't mean my society has nothing good to offer. My society has a lot of good things to offer. And I'm comfortable with that. Problem in the West is because they want to frame you in their worldview.
Right.
And they just can't frame us. Wait, what? So I'll give you an example. Every time somebody starts having these conversations with me, so they will be like, oh, so you believe in all these deities? I'm like, no. Oh, so you believe in reincarnation? I'm like, no. They're like, so you're an atheist? I say, no.
Okay.
And they get so confused. The look on their face is like, just usko Hindi mein bolte kutta kaat gaya unko,
Right.
kind of a thing. I was like, "Hare, ye kya bol diya tune?" I'm like, no, I'm a Hindu. No, but you're an atheist. No, I'm a Hindu.
You could be a Hindu atheist.
And I'm like, I don't even call myself a Hindu atheist.
Sure.
I'm fine being a Hindu. So let's assume that this is your cell phone. This is like an Android platform, right? Dharma is the operating system.
Sure.
And then there are different apps. One app is Cārvāka, one is Sankhya, one is Nyaya, one is Vaishnavism, one is Gaudiya Vaishnavism,
right.
One is Shaivism. You could be a Alvar, you could be a Nayanar, you could be a Shakta, you could be into Tantra, you could be anything. There are different apps on the platform of Dharma. From the Jain Panth, you could be a Stanakwasi Jain, Deravasi Jain, different kind of Jain. You could be a Digambar, whatever Jain you want to be. You could be a Mahayana Buddhist, you could be a Theravada Buddhist, you could be a Hinayana Buddhist, or you could be Bulle Shah. You could be a Sufi Bulle Shah, Sachal Sarmas, you could be Baba Farid. But the operating system is one of mutual respect, reciprocity, and Krishna's ahimsa. If you follow these three rules, you are part of Dharma.
Sure.
That's all you need to join the membership club. Like every club has basic membership requirements.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. Mutual respect, reciprocity, and Krishna's ahimsa.
I think, and that's very well put. Thank you for putting that together. I think Indians in India would probably understand that very well. But here in the West, I don't think it's quite the case. At least in my experience, Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, anyone of Indian origin has a disconnect to their identity, to their religion, to their faith. Do you think those same rules apply to them?
Yes, because again, like I said, a lot of Indians in India also have this problem, because that's what I call the Abrahamization of the Dharmic mind. When we ourselves are, we are engrossed in the dominant culture, and the dominant culture is Western universalism. Again, this is not an anti-Western thing. I'm just non-Western. Again, I want to repeat, I'm not anti-Western. I like many things in the West. I'm very pro-West.
Sure.
But I'm pro-West in a non-Western way.
Yeah, a lot of people like, so I'm a proud British Hindu. And people don't say, how can you be British and Hindu at the same time? Even my cousins in India will say, Veletti, this kind of thing, or you shower once a week, etc. So, but I wear my identity very well. Like when I'm going to functions, I want to make sure I'm wearing Bharati dress, or I'll wear my India flag if I'm going to an important function. Even, we're going to have Remembrance Day coming up soon, where poppy flowers will come up. So I make sure I've got my marigold, which represents India, but I'm still proud of how India has contributed to the British Army and the World War and what have you. So Hindus in the West, I don't know if they see the relevance of Dharma. How do they apply it to their worldview, their world shape? And you've spent some time in Canada also. Could we compare the differences there?
But listen, when you are an immigrant First of all, your only priority is just making it
Hmm.
in life, right? Financially, having financial stability.
I think my parents' generation had to do that. They had to struggle to find work and settle in.
Mhm.
My generation, not so much. They're settled. They've got good jobs, doctors, lawyers, everything. But yet that identity can still be somewhat of a crisis.
That's, I think, a parenting thing. I
Sure.
think I don't know how to say this. Sometimes I just say it's bad parenting.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if your parents can't engage you in a conversation, and if your parents can't keep you in a conversation for more than 5 minutes and explain your culture to you, then I think that's a parenting issue.
They maybe they had different challenges in life. I look at my parents. They came. My dad came to this country when he was 13 years old.
Mhm.
Went to university, everything here. Brought me and my sister up with great values and principles, and now we are living out our lives. But not everyone has had privileges like that. They're more likely to have gone to a Roman Catholic school and they would sing hymns and things like that. But do they go to the mandir? No. Do they celebrate anything within their religion? No. Do they care about any of that stuff? No. It's
But,
just not a
but
part
why
of their
don't
life.
they? That's the question somebody needs to ask. Why don't they?
No need. Why do I need to?
That's the whole point, right? They don't need to, then fine for them. But
Yeah.
I don't think so. There's a spiritual crisis. In my opinion, people in the Hindu community, whether it's, I mean, I will not say for the British community over here, but my experience, because now I've been a lot to America and Canada.
Mm.
This is my second year in a row of living in America and Canada for like almost 5 months, going around, meeting people, doing talks, attending mandir functions and stuff like that. I don't see a spiritual crisis in America and Canada. I see a political crisis in America and
Yeah.
Canada. I think Hindus have confused political Hinduism with spiritual Hinduism.
Mm.
I think Hindus don't know what's happening and they don't have the words to express themselves, and they think they have a spiritual crisis. Like, I asked them, okay, is mandir attendance reducing in Canada? They're like, no. Mandir collection reducing in Canada? They're like, no. Festivals are becoming smaller and smaller in Canada? They're like, no. I was like, so what's the crisis?
Mm.
I was like, you have more people coming to the mandir, you have more collection in the mandir, your festivals and your celebrations are becoming grander and grander and grander.
They just opened a new mandir in is it New Jersey or somewhere?
They expanded it. The
Right.
mandir was always there,
Sure.
but they've made it even bigger and amazing. Yeah, if you are in New Jersey, you should go and visit the Robbinsville Baps Mandir. But the point is that if all of this is happening, where is the spiritual crisis? And they'll be like, my second generation child is not engaged in it. I was like, don't give me anecdotes, give me absolute studies.
Okay.
Give me studies. Most of the times when we look at Hindu immigrants in North America, actually the lowest divorce rates.
Yeah.
Most of them have stable family lives. Most of them, even now, I'm not saying it in a bad way or a good way, they marry other Hindus irrespective of the race, but they end up marrying Hindus.
Sure.
I'm like, what crisis are we talking about? Like, what is the crisis? You find some, and I think a lot of this is driven by the negativity bias, because you only remember the negative case.
Yeah. Sure.
You only remember the friend who doesn't care, because the
Mhm.
20 friends around you who care are never counted.
Mhm.
And I think it's a lot about the negativity bias. The crisis I think Hindus have in the Western world, especially in North America, is a very political one. They don't have a political identity, they don't have a political bone. They outsource their political thinking to some people.
Mm.
Historically, I mean, I don't mind saying this, in the left, they are very left leaning. I mean, the polls show that. I'm not making these things up.
Yeah.
In North America, most of them vote for the Democrats, and they basically outsource it. If I ask them, why do you vote for the Democrats, all of them give one answer: they are pro immigration. I mean, that's not a good enough answer for me personally. I
Sure.
think that's not like when I expect like, if I talk to many communities over there, if I talk to the Irish community in America or the Polish community in America, different people, they'll be giving me answers. Okay, this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. And with
Actual
the Indian
specifics.
community, immigration,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not impressed.
Not
They're not very politically savvy.
Sure.
It shows the political immaturity of the Hindu community in North America. It's changing now. Now they're, now with the subtleness of the attacks coming on the Hindu community in North America, they are like, oh,
having to wake up.
they
So
are.
so like like Hindu American Foundation, these kind of
they're doing
organizations.
fantastic work. All of them are, whether it's the Coalition of Hindus of North America, KONA, whether it's the Hindu American Foundation, they're doing fantastic, or whether it's the Hindu Forum of Canada. There are multiple forums there, and they're doing good work. And I'm going to say something very controversial now.
Sure.
I think the biggest problem of the Hindu society is not these political groups. They do what they can. Actually, the temple has let them down.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not going to be popular for saying this, but
Sure.
I think the temples across the Western world, they have let the community down.
How so? Are they not empowered to make change?
They don't have a spine.
Okay.
Temples, I'm going to say it. I don't care. It's like, what are they going to cancel me for? I don't give a damn.
Okay.
My house doesn't run from these temples. So, I mean, they lack a spine. They lack the will. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to stir the pot. And listen,
I can understand why. What's the need for them to have this spine?
Because the community and its welfare is way more important than this just one mandir. So I'll give you an example without taking names of temples. So recently in Canada, since the last 18 months, there have been consistent attack on Hindu temples where people have sprayed graffiti, broken property, stolen money from the mandirs, written Khalistan, Murdabad and stuff like that in the mandirs. And I'm not going to take the name of the temples, but when the Hindu community of Canada went around and started taking signatures of people, right? Many mandirs said, but it has not happened here. Is that an answer?
That's something similar happened here with the Leicester situation.
Exactly.
And there was temples who said, no, it's okay. They didn't come inside.
Yeah.
But they attacked and they're attacking all the others.
This is my problem with the Hindu community. And that's why I say Hindus have mistaken a political crisis problem. When I say political, I don't mean party X or party Y. I mean a political crisis. You could be a left-wing voter, right-wing voter, a centrist voter, a far-right voter, or far-left voter. I don't care about that. I care about whether you're a politically active person or not, whether you have a functioning brain or not.
Right.
See, when 90% of a community votes for one party, this is what I think. They have outsourced their brain to someone.
Would you say that about BJP in India?
No, because even today, only 50% of Indians vote for BJP.
Right.
I think Indian audiences are way more politically active. I'll tell you, it shows in so many parameters, right? Indian voting percentages, Indian Hindus and their voting percentages are far higher than British Hindus, Canadian Hindus, American Hindus. You name the Hindu, we vote more than all of you guys combined. All of you guys combined. Hindus in India vote. They are so politically active. They are in the bone political. They have robust debates. They will have arguments. The argumentative Indian is real. We argue over at the chai tapri or the panwala, everywhere. We argue on politics.
Yeah, they'll be friends and walk down the street together.
We will be, and we'll vote. Even today, BJP gets approximately 50% of the vote, not more than that. The rest are, there are so many multiple political outfits in India, they still get voted. But the point is, because we have that culture in India, the political Hinduism is very active. That's why the Hindu is very active. Over here, voting percentages are like 30%, 35% amongst the Hindu community, 40%, 50% at best. I'm sorry, you should be ashamed of yourself if you have such work. I don't know how else to say this. You should be ashamed of yourself.
I know, at least in my friend circle growing up, voting, what's the point? No one ever listens. There's no need to.
It's ridiculous.
And then at some point, I used to volunteer my time at the polling booths and realize, actually, nobody comes to vote. How can you complain about the voting system if you don't vote?
Yes.
So at least in my friend circle, I've been active about at least go and vote. Instead, even if you're going to go there and spoil your vote, at least go show up on the day. But I don't know if that applies to everyone. I don't think people believe in the political systems
because they're lazy, because they live in a rich country where they have free health care. Some things are taken care of. The road's always fixed, so they don't care, which is why you are in a mess that you are as a community. Because if you cared enough, you would have fought for issues. And if you would have fought for issues, today your mandirs would not be attacked. And when I say fight for issues, I don't mean go and beat people up. I mean fight intellectually, raise your voice, be activists. And by activists, I don't mean block the roads like let's save the planet kind of a thing. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there are ways of doing your activism too. And these are excuses people give. I'll give you an example. Ontario just had a state election, the province of Ontario in Canada. 33% people of the province of Ontario voted. Mumbai in India is insulted as a place which has a low voting percentage, and 60% people turn out for a municipal election, let alone the state election.
Wow.
It will be like 67, 68%.
Okay.
I mean, this is just a sorry excuse.
Let's give some constructive feedback then to say the Mandars in the West. What could they do to grow this spine?
First of all, mandirs should never endorse a political party, but mandirs could do voter registration drives, get out to vote campaigns. Mandirs could do campaigns where they could say, adopt a highway, adopt a neighborhood, do these. Are these not political campaigns? Taking care of your neighborhood is not a political campaign. When I say political, I mean be involved in the community. Being involved in the community is not just doing dandiya and garba and doing dhankataka. No, it's more than that. It's beyond caring about your neighborhood. See, when you moved here for multiple reasons. Now be a responsible citizen, for goodness sakes. And being a responsible citizen means caring for your community, caring for your neighborhood, caring for the policies, caring for the leadership. Who's my prime minister? Who's my councillor? Who's my member of legislative assembly? I don't know how things are over here. Like in our case, we have a member of parliament, member of legislative assembly, and a local councillor. And
engage with them,
spend time with them, or eventually have the aspiration of being a political leader. Now, if you're not going to do any of that, and then you're going to say, they're all like that, you're just a sorry excuse of a human being.
Sure. Let's switch back to Canada for a moment. Postmodernism. Is it a problem? Is the current Canadian government going to change its views? Trudeau Saab has had done some interesting things recently. What's the scope there?
Like a lot of people don't know, 1970s Canada officially made multiculturalism a state policy. Like it was the policy of the state, multiculturalism. Now there are two models in North America. One is the Canadian model, one is the American model. The American model is what I call the kind of a melting pot, where everybody comes and they just blend into the pot.
Right.
That's the American. They all become American. Freedom and democracy. That kind of an American thing.
Okay.
That's the American way. The Canadian model is the salad bowl. So while everybody is in the bowl, but everybody is like an individual crumb. Everybody is.
Right.
So it depends. Sometimes the salad bowl looks nice for them. Sometimes the melting pot looks better. I think Canada's problem is people don't realize, because people don't follow Canadian politics. And I happen to be one of the few, rare people who does follow. People don't... Politics is performative at a subsequent level. I understand that. People don't realize how performative Canadian politics is. Look, it's a very boring sort of a society. Nothing really happens. What is Canada? America's neighbor. Canadians, I love you, but you're just recognized as America's
very
neighbor.
Low population though. There's a lot more to happen there.
Yeah. I mean, what is Canada's foreign policy? What is it? Their security concerns are taken care by America. Literally. 70% plus of their trade happens with America. Literally. It's a country basically right besides America. And Americans have the best neighbors on planet Earth, because Canadians are the nicest, most docile people you will ever meet. Like, I have traveled across the world. The least amount of racism I have faced in my life
in Canada
is in Canada. The nicest people, the nicest. I say this with full responsibility as someone who's literally traveled around the world. The nicest people are Canadians. They are so nice. But the point is, they have a prime minister right now who literally embodies performative politics.
Right.
Like Jastinder, as I like to call him. He's just the performative puppet in chief or clown in chief, whatever you want to call him. And I don't understand that. I hate performative politics. I believe politicians should deliver, speak less. He just speaks too much. And every time it's the same shtick, and they keep adding digits and alphabets in their words.
He's got a large voter base in the
liberal areas, in the cities, basically. Because listen, far right politics is very problematic
Mm.
in these societies, including this one. It's a problem, especially if you're from a new immigrant minority group. It is a problem, which is why the left did some things right, but then the left went too far.
But isn't that always the case? Left always goes too far.
Everybody goes too far. See,
Sure.
people confuse this. It's about not about the left or the right. It's about the orthodoxy and the heterodoxy.
Right.
Who's
Help us understand that.
Okay, so orthodoxy is someone who has remained in power sufficiently enough to be comfortable to control everything. Heterodoxy is the one who always stays out of power, so they are by nature open. So right now, every time you hear people saying, see how I have never been heckled by the right is so open. I said, did you read about the McCarthy era? Did you read about McCarthyism? That was the right wing going after you. So because that time, the right wing was the essence of the society.
Right.
The right wing was the orthodoxy. How open was the left at that time? The left would accept anything. Similarly, then the left won. And the left became the orthodoxy now. So when the left has become the orthodoxy, they have become the tyranny.
Is that not just a healthy politics moving between left and right?
Yes, it is.
Just stay in
I
one.
think right now the swing is to the left. The left holds the cultural orthodoxy. I'm not talking about in a political sense. I'm talking about in the cultural sense. The essence of society is left wing. And that's why you'll see all sorts of people being accepted in the right wing who just cannot find a space in the left, good or bad. And the left just refuses to change.
Sure.
Because left is obsessed with this, performative sort of song and dance. And I don't know. I mean, I just find it so irritating.
Sure. You spoke about this on one of your episodes, the Khalistan problem coming out of Canada, especially with particular groups. Could you help us understand that and maybe help us understand why Canada is so susceptible to this?
Oh, I would recommend 2 books to understand why Khalistan is the way it is in Canada. One is by GBS Sidhu. It takes you to the journey of how Khalistan was propped up by the Congress party. He's a former research and analysis wing of India member. He used to work for the RNAW, and he wrote a book. Luckily, his book came out just before the Indian government made this change in rules that former service officers cannot write anymore.
Okay.
Luckily, his book came out just in the nick of time. His book came out. So we are lucky. At least we know about one. Now, if you're a retired RNAW officer, the current government has made sure you cannot write anything. So yeah, sucks. But yeah, barely anybody knows about this. By the way, the BJP did this change. So if you want to criticize the BJP, this is one thing you can criticize them. And under the guise of national security, this is just trying to hide things. And have you noticed the Congress has not opposed this?
Yeah,
because the Congress is like, oh man, we are very happy because even our skeletons will come out.
A lot of skeletons.
Yeah, and then they have way more skeletons in the closet than the BJP. So both of them have like, okay, gentleman's agreement, brother. We don't get this shit out. And the other book is of a great Canadian journalist, someone who I look up to. I now call him a friend. He's Terry Milewski. And if you read GBS Sidhu's and Terry Milewski's book, you will understand the entire journey of how Khalistan has been propped up in Canada, how an extremely minority group of, I don't even like to call them Sikhs, I call them Jat thugs, because most of them belong to the Jat caste. Like it or not, that's what it is. And it has now developed into a full-blown gang war, where there are 4 gangs, 2 main and 2 minor gangs. Bambia gang, Bishnoi gang, and many other gangs, and they operate either in Indian Punjab or in Canada in Surrey and Brampton. And innocent Hindus and Sikhs are just victims of them, because if you raise your voice against it, they will come and threaten you. They will come and try to harm you. I know one gentleman in the United Kingdom, I think Mr. Kapoor.
Yes,
Mr. Kapoor
a restaurant owner.
Yeah, restaurant owner has been at a receiving end, and kudos to that man. He's a brave individual, and he stands up to them. And it's just these are gangsters. And they work in a very nice way. So they have music from where they have copied 90s East Coast versus West Coast, Biggie music. Smalls versus Tupac Shakur.
Okay.
They have kind of aped that model. Most of their songs are jatta this, jatti that, full of casteist lyrics, sexist, misogynistic lyrics. They have completely imbibed those patterns about guns, about gangs, about drugs. And then Then you have human trafficking and drug peddling as the monetary source. And that is facilitated because most of the trucking businesses are owned by the same people.
Right.
And then on top of that, so you have the soft peddling through music, the hard peddling through this, and then you have a political class, because a lot of people don't understand how messed up Canada's political system is. So they have primaries where, let's say both of us are trying to fight for the ticket of, let's say, this constituency.
Yeah.
Now both of us are going to fight. Now if I am resourceful enough, do you know you could be visiting Canada and just happen to be in that area? You have not got even a Canadian passport, and you can vote in a Canadian primary.
Oh, really?
So how these Khalistanis have gamed the system is that they will take these students who have come there, they'll give them like $100 Canadian and khana pina, and it was like, "Aa jao, chalo, oye, vote karo, oye."
Mhm.
And they just, so what they do is, even if their candidate is going to lose the election, but the point is, everybody who gets elected as a participating candidate is always a Khalistani.
Right.
In certain pockets. So whether they are in a conservative party, whether they are, and such a tiny minority, but they have gamed the system.
What's the solution?
The solution is making people aware. I think the solution was Justin Trudeau. I have never been more grateful to Justin Trudeau than since the last 3 weeks of my life, because that bandar, because he is a bandar, him blurting out on the floor of the Parliament, the House of Commons, was the greatest gift that was ever going to be given to the Hindu and Sikh community of Canada, the Indian community of Canada, because it shunned a spotlight on Khalistan. Because everybody was like, because all the media outfits, like one day Nijjar was a plumber, the other day he was an activist, then Bloomberg called him a priest. And don't trust me, go and Google. They were lit. And then the Indian government was like, he's holding a AK-47 and running training camps in your country. And then everybody got interested. Wait, we support this guy? Like, what is wrong with us? And average Canadians were like, damn, this guy is crazy. And that's what has happened. And to me, Khalistan should be called a Jat Punjabi gang war.
Wow.
That's what Khalistan is. It's a Jat Punjabi gang war that is deeply involved in drug peddling and many other things. That's what it is. And I've given you 2 books. You should read these 2 books, one by Terry Milevsky and one by GBS Sidhu. If you read these 2 books, it's not more than 700 pages. It will not take more than 2 months of your life. But if you read these 2 books, you will understand the sins of the Congress Party and Indira Gandhi. And then you will also understand what all these people have done.
They had Rahul Gandhi as a chief guest at the Sri Harmandir Sahib recently. And the sort of irony there of his grandmother and everything going on there.
Yeah, I don't understand half the things that happen in Indian politics. Like I said, every political party is performative, including the BJP. But yeah, nothing beats Hamara Jastinder. I think Jastinder is so special. He's just amazing. His tweets are so entertaining.
I saw one recently where he had a tweet, and then and I also made sure I spoke to
and then
India.
Somebody from India just created an entire series mocking him. It's so hilarious.
I saw that.
Can you believe this non-serious person is actually the Prime Minister of Canada? Like, he's such a muppet, and this muppet is the Prime Minister. But it's such a nice time to be alive. I always say this to people: this is the best time to be alive, because we literally have a joker in charge of the Canadian political landscape, and I'm loving every moment of it.
Brilliant. Interesting conversation here on the Vichaar Manthan podcast with our guest, Kushal Mehra. Kushal, I'm going to go into what we call the rapid fire round. So ask you some quick fire questions so our guests can get to know you a little bit better. And for everyone listening at home, we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and your favorite streaming platform. Please do like, subscribe, and share. And if you've got comments, suggestions, please do email me, podcast@vichaarmanthan.org. Kushalji, if you were stranded on a deserted island and you could only take 3 items with you, what would they be?
Oof. Butter chicken, water. If I'm assuming there's no water on that.
Yeah, you're stranded.
I'm stranded. Oh, I don't know. I'll take my Kindle because I would need to read a lot of books. I'll take an internet dongle.
Fine.
Yeah. And I would take because I'm on the island, I'll manage food. I'm a meat eater, so I'll manage food and water.
Okay.
So food is taken care of. So I'll take something which gives me electricity, a book reading thing, and internet. I'm set.
You'll be fine. Okay. What goes into your perfect breakfast smoothie?
I don't have a smoothie. I eat poha daily. Poha for life.
Could you describe a moment in your life where you've had a paradigm shift?
Ooh. It was when I was a 21-year-old or a 20-year-old in York University. And I attended this class called Decision Making, where the class was, they just showed us one movie. It was on the Cuban Missile Crisis. And when I was watching the movie on the Cuban Missile Crisis, I clearly remembered. So they made us first argue from the American perspective. Then they made all the same people argue from the Russian perspective. That changed me. Has fundamentally changed me as a human being. It taught me that not only are you supposed to have your own point of view, you're supposed to understand the opposition's point of view as well as you understand your own point of view.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be? People pick like flying or invisible or something. Is there something?
Invisible.
Invisible. What would you do?
Nothing. Just go to a cafe and read and nobody bothers me. That's all I like, reading books.
Do you have a favorite book?
Oh, not one.
If you could recommend a book to someone to read.
I think Being Different by Rajiv Malhotra, if you're a young kid, you should read that book, and
Sure.
Bhagavad Gita.
You've got a favorite quote? Or a motto you live by?
No, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, you baffle them with bullshit.
That's a good one. What's the best piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
Shri Krishna. Karmanne vadikaraste mafaleshu kadachana. I think that's the best advice I got from Shri Krishna in my life.
Could you explain that for those that don't know?
Well, you should focus on your action and not obsess on the end goal. Karm kar, phal pe tera adhikar nahi hai. You should focus on your karma because you can't control the result. So don't obsess on that. Obsess on what you're doing. So if you focus on what you're supposed to do, you will do it better. And then I think more often than not, things will fall in place.
Don't be attached to the fruits of your labor.
You can be attached. I don't believe anybody can be not attached. I would say don't obsess on the fruits of your labor. If you obsess on the action, not on the result, I think the probabilities of you achieving the result are a lot more.
If you had to fight a horse-sized chicken or 10 chicken-sized horses, which would you pick?
10 chicken-sized horses. Because I'm thinking after fighting them, I'll eat them.
You're butter chicken.
Yeah.
What does the term sustainability mean to you?
Sustainability to me would mean a system where you can enjoy the benefits of progress while you leave something behind for the people who are coming after you. That's sustainability.
Sure. Is sustainability interchangeable with Dharma?
Yes, I think so it is.
Okay. Who have you met that's inspired you the most?
It's not one person. I can't say one person. I'm not a personality-driven individual.
Sure. So if you're having a dinner party, who's top 3 people you'd invite?
Just want my family. I don't care about personalities. I'm happy with my family and my close friends. I'm very happy. My personal life is very set.
Is there something that keeps you awake at night?
Nothing. I sleep so well. I sleep 7 hours minimum every night. Like one of the things my wife complains about is, "Ala yaar, nuclear holocaust hoga, ye sota rahega." That's what my wife says all the time.
I give all my guests an opportunity to make a commitment on the podcast. I mean, you have lots of followers anyway, so people to hold you account. But is there something in your life that you want to do more of, or you're putting off, or you'd like to achieve?
Well, I don't have my own children. So the one thing that I'm obsessed about is, at least before I die, I want to make sure that I change the life of at least 100 children directly. So that is something my wife and I have given a lot of thought about, that once I turn 50 or she turns 50 after that. So maybe after the next, we start something where, we take responsibility for 100 children at least, transform their lives completely.
That's very humble. Any ideas what it could be?
I don't know. It could be starting with their education, their counseling, everything, making sure they become better human beings, like something of that sort. 100 children, whatever the cost would be for that. I mean, I'm already starting to save money for that. That eventually, a decade down the line, because I did the math, I would need X amount of money for that for 100 children. I can't do more than that. मेरी जितनी औकात है मैं उतना ही करूँगा. But yeah, that is something we have planned.
Sure. Very nice. Okay, that ends the rapid fire round. So hopefully, I guess, got to know you a little bit better. Let's go back into the main crux of this. India's hosted the G20. India's landed on the moon. Many things are happening in positive light. What's the promise of India? What can it do for the world? Why is it the next superpower?
I think what India can solve for the world is that India can show the world. India could be the first country in the world that could actually speak in English without being English.
Interesting. People say that the democracy of India is up for debate. Do you agree with that?
People don't get India. People who don't understand India say, oh, Indians love democracy. Yeah, Indira Gandhi tried in 1975. Check what happened to her. Indians will, if somebody comes in between Indians and democracy, every Indian will be on the street, left, right, center. They will throw that person out.
What are the top 3 challenges for a growing India?
I think better quality education. Just getting people educated is not just the criteria. I think better quality education, that is India's number one criteria. I think we need to produce better students. That I think we struggle at. More decentralization of policy. I still think Indian policy making is very top down, very Babu driven, very bureaucratic. I think that needs to change. That has been my criticism of the Modi government also, very Babu driven government. And the third challenge for India, I think, would be, I think even today India lacks people who understand the language of discourse. It's a training issue. I think Indians themselves don't know how to explain themselves. And they rely on somebody from the outside. And that I think these are the 3 challenges India is having.
On that education point, so I remember being in India, the long line of students trying to get in to do an exam. I just couldn't understand, like, we don't have the facilities to do exams. But you're saying that the actual quality of the education, from my understanding, everyone sends their children outside of India to get educated.
Yeah.
What would it take for the education quality to get better? Surely the professors and academics of the world will need to come to an established university. The establishments of education in India need to be improved. What would we need to do to make that happen?
I think India has a supply side problem.
Okay,
that's the problem. I think it's a supply side issue and it's an infrastructure issue, and a lot of these things stem from the lack of money. Listen, we still are a country with approximately $3,000 per capita income. We need to change that. I think in the next decade you'll see all these are supply side issues that will be sorted out with more and more money coming into India. That will, I think those things are not what bothers me is the actual quality of education. That's what bothers me. I think India is lacking in the quality of education aspect, and the sooner we solve that, the better off will we, in my opinion. I could be wrong.
Sure. Does India need the West, or does it need anything specific from the West?
I think everybody needs each other. Not only does India need the West, India needs the Gulf too. And the Gulf needs us, and the West needs us too. The world needs each other. This entire idea of intellectual isolationism, you just can't. Anybody who thinks they have all the answers, they are going to fall. A society that, and a person who's willing to learn from everywhere is the only person who can grow in life. I think India needs everyone, and everyone needs India.
You wouldn't say the same about other countries, though. Does the world need Pakistan?
Well, they need Pakistan to go.
But I mean, you joke. They are. It was India at one point, and I think it was a former prime minister of Pakistan. I can't remember which one. I saw it online saying, "Look, India's on the moon. India's hosting G20.
I think it was Shehbaz Sharif.
Yeah, I think so. So we gained independence at the same time. Why is one country, by all measures, a failure?
So the world needs Pakistan too, because whenever we look at Pakistan, we remember, don't be like them. So we need them too.
That's a sad state.
Who cares? It's not my problem.
Sure.
It's Pakistani's problem.
Sure.
मैंने उनका थोड़ा ठेका लेके रखा है. See, I don't care about the whole world. See, people say the world is my family. Well, if the world is my family, then Hitler is my rishtedar. I clearly don't want that rishtedar. The world is not my family. I will pick and choose who my family members are.
So no Vasudeva Kutumbakam?
No.
Not for you.
Murkhas think Vasudeva Kutumbakam.
Okay.
That's what the Hitopadesha said too.
Okay.
So the Vasudeva Kutumbakam believers are murkha.
Okay. What is Hindutva?
Hinduism that talks back.
Interesting. So actually, some places in the West, or those that are trying to define it that way, wouldn't see it that way. If you look at the things that happen in Leicester here in the UK and the way the definitions came out, why is it such a contrast?
Because again, they look at us from an Abrahamic definition. See, and I think in a huge way, I think the Hindu community itself is to be blamed for this mess, because the Hindu community came here, did not develop a political bone, just kept quiet, just kept on doing the thing. They became a successful community monetarily, so they clearly did something right. But when they had to have one foot in the political door, they did not. And then suddenly what happens is, now they start speaking and everybody's like, weren't you the quiet guy in the class who would never talk and just got good grades and just slept in the night and did not bother us, and now why are you talking? They were not used to it. So what's happening right now is people are not used to a Hindu that talks back. That's all it is. It's a phase. It'll go. They'll get used to Hindus talking back also. It'll be turbulence, like you're on a flight and then there's turbulence and then you eventually land safely, and then everybody's like, that's what we're going through, the turbulence phase.
Sure. Is free speech a threat in today's society? So actually, there was a guy yesterday who had the India flag around his. He wasn't even like a flag; he was just had it around his neck, and he got arrested.
Where?
In London.
Why?
Because of the recent laws. I don't know if it's a law or what it is, but somebody declared that you cannot have the Palestinian flag out and about. And obviously the police didn't know if it was Palestinian flag, Indian flag. This kid got arrested. I saw the video yesterday online. I mean, that's one particular story, but it is the ability to express yourself, quote unquote, free speech, under threat in today's society.
Yes, it is, because of the free rider problem. Somehow some authoritarians or people with authoritarian leanings think that because I need to make sure that the people with the Palestinian flag can't be out, I need to make sure everybody else does not come out. My answer has always been, let the person with the Palestinian flag come out. The line has to be drawn. I think the Americans have the perfect standard. Brandenburg versus Ohio is the perfect standard. Until and unless there is a case for a clear and imminent danger and a direct call to violence that qualifies the clear and imminent danger standard, people should be allowed to express themselves. I think we assume some people with bad ideas have superpowers. I think it's a very condescending view of society.
I can see how some of it stems though. Like, look at Toolkit and farmers' protest. One guy with a document that was shared managed to influence. So much happened.
And then Amritpal got arrested and is in jail.
I suppose.
What happened in India? Could they do anything? Nothing.
Lal Kila?
So?
Sure.
I mean, you guys are believers in karma, so he had his karma coming.
Sure. You guys.
I mean, I don't.
The question, is it a threat to liberal society?
No. I believe because it's the same free speech that gives me the strength to criticize Deep Sidhu, criticize Khalistan, criticize Islamism, criticize Hindu bigotry against Muslims in general. It's the same free speech. You don't want to use it. That's the problem. People don't want to use the same privileges that they use. And then they say, isko band kar do. No, tum bolna shuru karo.
Right.
It's spineless people always dislike free speech. People with a spine always likes free speech.
At a cost?
It's okay. I've borne a cost. I don't care. I'll go on speaking. I want free speech. I want more speech. I want more speech. Let the Palestinian flag be there on the road. The moment they say gas the Jew, throw them in jail. Because that's a direct call to violence. And that's a clear and imminent danger for the Jewish community. But if they don't say gas the Jew, they say, I support Palestine. I don't care. You have bad ideas. I will go right beside that person and say, you are a piece of human debris and you have bad ideas. That's what I would do.
But let them speak. Let them say what they want to say.
I don't care.
It's an interesting one, for sure. Brilliant. Kushalji, thank you very much for joining us on the Vichaar Manthan podcast. Is there a call to action? Is there a specific ask of the audience members listening at home that might tune into this at a later date? Is there some words of wisdom or pearls of advice you could leave us with to help at least the British community, if not the international community, understand a little bit more about what it is, what Dharma is, how to be sustainable, how to make Dharma digestible, or anything that you may wish to add?
I don't claim to be that senior person to make those calls, but I'll definitely tell everybody who listens to this one thing: be comfortable in your identity. Don't shy away from asserting it. Asserting your identity does not mean you have to hate the other. Asserting your identity is just in a room, people should know you are there. And once they know you are there, then they will have to ask you what your views are. And when they ask you what your views are, you should know enough to articulate it in a proper manner. Start by saying that I am a Hindu and I'm not going anywhere, and you cannot stop me.
That requires research, time, passion to be able to then articulate yourself.
Yeah, so don't speak on everything. Speak on a few subjects. Have your basic first principles clear. And once you have those things clear, it is not a Herculean task. I don't expect them to be the Einstein of everything. But I think a lot of times people make sorry excuses.
Thank you very much, Kushalji, for sharing that with us on the Vichaar Manthan podcast here today. If you're listening back to this, have a look at everything else that Vichaar Manthan does. We have papers, there are book clubs, there is the Sustainable Narratives Conference. Everything's up on YouTube. You can catch the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, which I think is going away soon, and Audible as well. As ever, it's my privilege to host this for you all. You can contact me at podcast@vichaarmanthan.org. My name is Sumit Sharma, and this was the Vichaar Manthan podcast. Namaste.